The film kicked off on a quiet, dark road, where a middle-aged man named Harry was driving alone. He slowed down when he spotted a broken-down car and its tall, imposing owner walking the quiet road. The man then asked for a ride, and Harry, clearly a bit uncomfortable but too polite to refuse, agreed. The initial drive was thick with awkward tension. Harry tried to make small talk about the man's bad luck, but his passenger was not in a chatty mood and seemed to take offense. The man then turned the tables, asking with a menacing tone if Harry thought he was some kind of maniac who killed random people. Harry grew even more nervous, caught between politeness and genuine fear, until the man suddenly burst out laughing.
You see your face right now.
Claiming it was all just a joke. The atmosphere shifted again in a heartbeat. Harry, his voice suddenly calm and confident, flipped the script entirely, asking what if he was the dangerous one. He laid out a chillingly specific scenario where he had punctured the man's radiator at a gas station earlier, all to orchestrate this very car ride, having been paid by the man's ex-wife to kill him over a custody battle. The man fell silent, the details hitting way too close to home. The scene then cut to Harry digging a shallow grave in a deserted field, having shot the man dead, confirming he was a professional hitman who had just arrived in the small town of Leroy, Texas for a job. The story then shifted its focus to the town of Leroy itself, introducing the film's true protagonist, a naive, nerdy, and gentle man named Ray. He was meeting his old friend Skip at a local cafe. Skip, who fancied himself a private detective, proudly revealed that he had been secretly investigating Ray's wife, Stacy, on his own initiative. He had caught her frequently going in and out of a hotel with another man and had the pictures to prove it. Skip clearly expected to be paid for his unsolicited detective work, but Ray was completely uninterested in the revelation. Instead of getting angry at his wife, he was annoyed at his friend, telling Skip to mind his own business. Meanwhile, Ray's wife, Stacy, was shown going through the motions of her own life. She worked as a vocal tutor, teaching small children out of their homes every day. It was clear she didn't particularly enjoy the job, but she did it to scrape together some extra money for her real dream. When Ray came to pick her up later, the unspoken tension about the affair hung heavy in the air, but Ray didn't have the courage to bring it up. Instead, they went straight to the local bank. Stacy's big dream was to open her own beauty salon, but they didn't have the cash. They tried to apply for a business loan, but without any real collateral to their name, their application was quickly and firmly rejected. Dejected after leaving the bank, the couple decided to head over to Ray's older brother's house for dinner. Upon arriving, the first thing they noticed was Ray's brother's flashy new red speedboat parked out front, a stark and immediate reminder of the financial gap between the two brothers. The dinner itself was an uncomfortable affair. Junior, Ray's brother, drank too much and took great pleasure in bringing up embarrassing stories from their childhood, all at Ray's expense. It was clear this was a familiar dynamic, with Ray being constantly overshadowed and put down by his more successful and boisterous older brother, adding another layer to his quiet desperation. The next day at work, the quiet misery of Ray's life was on full display. He was the co-owner of a hardware store, a business he managed with his brother Junior, that had been passed down from their parents. But due to his naive and trusting nature, Ray was consistently getting fleeced by his own brother in the company's financials. Junior pocketed most of the profits, leaving Ray with a take-home pay that was barely more than what he paid his own employees. That evening, trying to salvage some connection with his wife, Ray brought home Stacy's favorite pizza for dinner. His hopes were dashed when she emerged from their bedroom, all dressed up and ready to go out, brushing him off with a vague excuse about meeting up with friends. Once again, Ray didn't have the guts to challenge her, and he was left to eat dinner all by himself, the silence of the house amplifying his loneliness and stress. This final rejection was the last straw. Pushed to the brink, Ray drove to a local gun shop and bought a pistol. He then went to the seedy motel where Skip had told him his wife was having her affair. Sitting in the parking lot, the reality of his situation crashed down on him, and he decided to end his own life right then and there. But before he could pull the trigger, his car door swung open and a stranger climbed into the passenger seat. The man, named Tiller, had mistaken Ray for the professional hitman he was supposed to meet. Without much fanfare, he handed a completely bewildered Ray a thick envelope full of cash and another envelope containing the address of the person he wanted killed. Ray, still reeling from his own dark intentions, could only stare blankly as this bizarre, unexpected job landed right in his lap. Just as Tiller got out and left, another car pulled into the lot. It was Harry, the real hitman, arriving just moments too late. The next morning, driven by a strange mix of confusion and morbid curiosity, Ray was parked outside the address he'd been given. He hadn't decided what to do, but he felt compelled to at least stake out the target, who turned out to be a local lawyer. He watched the man's office for hours. Later that evening, the lawyer went to a bar for a drink, and Ray awkwardly followed him inside. When the target went into the restroom, Ray trailed him, but the lawyer left the bar immediately, seemingly knowing that he was being followed. As Ray was heading back to his own car, the lawyer suddenly ambushed him from the shadows, getting the drop on him and dragging him into his vehicle. The lawyer, aware he was being followed, tried to intimidate Ray into revealing who had hired him. A clumsy scuffle broke out inside the car, and in the panic, Ray's new gun went off, accidentally shooting and killing the lawyer instantly. Panicked and in way over his head, Ray drove out to a deserted spot and dumped the body. Then, in a moment of pure naivety, he took his car with its blood-stained passenger seat to a public, brightly lit car wash to clean up the evidence. Unsure of what to do next, he went to his brother Junior's house to ask for help. Junior wasn't home, but his wife was. She was complaining about her own husband's late nights out, and then, assuming Ray was in on the secret, she casually dropped a bombshell on him. Junior and Stacy had been having an affair with each other for a long time, using that very same hotel as their meeting spot. She'd known all about it and had simply given up trying to stop them, shattering Ray's entire world in a single offhand comment. Elsewhere in town, the real hitman Harry was sitting patiently at a local bar, still waiting for his client, Tiller, to show up, completely unaware that his job had been accidentally outsourced to a hardware store owner. While waiting, he calmly watched a couple of customers harass a waitress and coolly offered to help her with the problem, an offer she quickly declined. That same night, Tiller snuck into the dead lawyer's house and went straight for a safe, expecting a big payday, only to find it completely empty. The next morning, a furious Tiller tracked Ray down at the hardware store and demanded he return the money from this safe. Money that Ray obviously didn't have and knew nothing about, thinking he had stolen it. As if his day wasn't complicated enough, while Ray was still dealing with Tiller's threats, his friend Skip showed up, pulling him aside to talk about something important. The wannabe detective excitedly revealed that he had been secretly following Ray since the previous afternoon. He had seen everything. The accidental murder, the panicked dumping of the body, all of it. But instead of being horrified, Skip was thrilled. He saw this as his big break, a real-life murder case to crack. He eagerly told Ray that he wanted in on the action, ready to become his partner and increase his credibility as a private investigator, whether Ray liked it or not. With a mystery to solve, Ray and his new self-appointed partner Skip went to the office of the lawyer whom Ray had accidentally killed. They found out the lawyer's name, James, and cornered one of James's colleagues, and when the man refused to talk about his client's private business, Skip employed some brutal, if amateurish, interrogation tactics. After a few head dunks in the office toilet, the terrified colleague finally broke, revealing that James was the personal lawyer for a wealthy local tycoon named Adam, the owner of a large car dealership who was wrapped up in a blackmailing case. Ray and Skip then paid a visit to Adam, with Skip puffing out his chest and introducing them as a detective team there to help. Adam, desperate, bought the act and told them the whole story. He had been having an affair with a woman named Angie, who was now blackmailing him for a large sum of money. James was simply supposed to be the bagman, tasked with delivering the hush money before he was killed. Meanwhile, the real professional, Harry, was making his own moves. After calmly buying a hammer at a hardware store, he tracked down the home address of his no-show client, Tiller. It was here that the web of connections became clear. Tiller was the boyfriend of Angie, the same woman who had been blackmailing Adam. After Tiller returned home that day, Harry, who had been waiting for him, asked for an explanation as to why Tiller didn't show up and had seemingly hired another hitman. When Tiller refused to talk, Harry tortured him, threatening Angie's life until the terrified man told him everything he knew, including who had really killed James. With the information secured, Harry shot Tiller in the head and left. Moments later, Ray and Skip arrived at the same house, looking for the missing money, and believing Angie was the one who had it. They interrogated her, only to learn that she was just as clueless as they were. She confirmed she never got the money because her boyfriend, Tiller, had been too impatient to wait for the drop. That night, as Ray and Skip were trying to figure out who could have taken the money, a light bulb went off in Ray's head. He remembered that the lawyer, James, had been carrying a suitcase when he first saw him, a suitcase he didn't have with him when he went into the bar. They raced back to where James's car was still parked, and sure enough, the suitcase full of cash was sitting inside. But instead of celebrating, Ray did something completely out of character. The naive, timid man pulled his gun on Skip and demanded the money for himself. He was going to use it to fund Stacy's dream of opening a beauty salon, clinging to the desperate hope that this grand gesture would be enough to fix his broken marriage. Ray quickly called Stacy, who had just woken up in a hotel bed with his brother Junior. When Ray arrived, he found them together, the betrayal laid bare. But even then, in a final pathetic act of devotion, he handed the suitcase full of money over to Stacy, hoping it would be enough to make her come back to him. His hopes were crushed instantly. Stacy and Junior took the money, called the police to report Ray, and then made a run for it, planning to start a new life together with his cash. The police dispatch about Ray's arrest crackled over a scanner that Harry was listening to. The hitman intercepted the police car, calmly executed the two cops, but Ray managed to free himself and ran away from them. With Ray on the run, Harry resorted to a new tactic. He kidnapped Skip and used him as a hostage, calling Ray to demand the suitcase of money as compensation for the job that had been stolen from him. A transformation had finally taken place in Ray. The desperate, cuckolded husband was gone, replaced by a man with a singular, cold focus. It wasn't hard for him to find his brother. Junior wasn't exactly trying to lay low, towing his flashy new red speedboat out of town. Ray tracked them to a motel and walked into their room with a gun in his hand, finding Junior and Stacy taking a bath together. Without much fanfare, he shot his brother, but as he looked at Stacy, the woman he had loved so much, he couldn't bring himself to pull the trigger again. He simply let her go, leaving her to deal with the bloody aftermath. With his revenge complete, Ray sat down with a suitcase of money, calmly waiting for the professional hitman Harry to arrive and settle their score once and for all. When the professional hitman Harry finally showed up at the motel, Ray, holding the suitcase of money, demanded that he let Skip go first. Harry complied, releasing his hostage. The moment Skip was clear, Ray opened fire, creating a chaotic diversion that allowed him and Skip to scramble back into the motel room for cover. In the brief exchange, however, Ray had been shot in the stomach. Bleeding and knowing he was in bad shape, he urged a panicked Skip to take the money and run, to get out of there while he still could. After Skip escaped with the cash, Harry cautiously entered the motel room. He found Ray's brother Junior still alive but wounded in the bathroom. In a final act of business, Harry finished him off. With that loose end tied up, he turned his attention back to Ray. The two men engaged in a final gunfight within the close quarters of the motel room, a chaotic exchange of bullets that tore the place apart. A few moments later, Harry emerged from the room limping heavily and clutching a severe wound in his own abdomen. No one won the fight. Harry managed to stumble back to his car before collapsing, and inside the room, Ray also succumbed to his injuries. Both men were left to bleed out and die, their violent paths ending in a quiet, bloody stalemate. Sometime later, Skip was driving, presumably on his way to the police station with the suitcase of money, when he accidentally saw Ray's wife, Stacy, walking alone on the side of the road. He pulled over and in a quiet, final twist, gave her a ride.